This is going to be the most realistic tour of my garden because I have never gone this long without maintaining it. Today we are having a high of 105 degrees, which is not bad considering the fact that we've been at like 110, 115, 117 day after day. So the garden is finally getting a little bit of a break and things are starting to come back to life. So I'm going to show you what it looks like before I clean it up and get it ready for fall planting. I saw a video from Enlightenment Garden and she gardens in Arizona as well. And she waters her plants 4 times a day. So I was like, okay, I'm going to try the same to see how it works out. Because I noticed that by midday, everything still looked very droopy. And today's the second day on this new schedule. Yesterday, I noticed that the plants still looked really perky even at like 2 p.m., 4 p.m. So I think it's working. I'm going to wait a little bit longer. But I think I really like that setup. I'm going to start with the porch. Here I have a ton of tomatoes and tomatillos, and they are the most beautiful transplants that I've ever had. I started everything from seed and I even gave some away. And I'm honestly just so proud of these because they're like 2.5 feet tall. They're gorgeous. Once I plant them out, they're going to start producing right away. And hopefully that will allow me to get a lot bigger fruit. And they're hardened off and everything. I'm just waiting because I still need to amend the garden beds. And I'm going to do that this weekend. So hopefully these will go into their permanent spots. The other reason I've been holding off is just because it's been so hot. But I think they're ready. They're ready. I know they are. I also have a few squash plants right here, which are looking stunning. One of my goals this year is to start almost everything. Not every seed likes to be direct sown, but I'm trying to do as much as possible. Only because the birds have taken over my garden and they've claimed it as their own. So anything that I try and direct sow, they immediately eat. And it's not a handful of birds, it's dozens of birds that come by every single day. And they tear up the garden, they destroy everything, and you'll get to see that today. But that will be transplanted soon. I have my Eden rose right here. It's getting quite tall, but it hasn't exploded with a ton of growth. I think that'll start happening as it cools down. I also have some tomatoes planted alongside it that I need to take out. These are dwarf tomatoes and look at them. They're still hanging in there. When I show you my indeterminates, you're going to see a stark difference because those are completely fried. But the dwarf tomatoes, for some reason, are still alive. They're hanging in there. One thing I noticed this year is that they produced a lot better than my indeterminates. I got way bigger harvest. And if that continues this fall, next spring, I might only plant determinates instead of indeterminates. Next to it, I have things like my soursop, which could be doing better, but it's not doing bad, and it's still hanging in there. Down here, I have things like Thai basil, a couple more dwarf tomatoes, and aloe vera. This makes me really sad because this is a Carmen avocado that my sister gifted me because my mother's name was Carmen, and unfortunately, it's so fried. I want to cut it back, but I'm scared that if I cut it back, that'll just make it more prone to burning because it's still really hot. So I'm waiting for it to cool down a little bit more, and then I'll give it a good pruning and hopefully be able to save it. This right here is another dwarf tomato, and this is what I'm talking about. So some of the foliage got scorched, but with just a few days of cooler weather, it's trying to come back. I'm seriously very impressed with dwarf tomatoes this year. This is a little bay leaf start that I need to plant out. More dwarf tomatoes. And then this is my sunshine blueberry bush. Look how much foliage it's put out. And not just that, but there's no scorching on it, which is amazing. The sunshine blueberry is a dwarf variety. It's self-pollinating, and the berries on it are delicious. I used to have it a bit more shaded, but it really seems to like this spot with more sun. You can see more of it right there. It really just spread out over the last few months. And then down here, I have several more squash that were dying back, as you can see here. But again, it started growing again once the weather started cooling down. Then I have herbs like mint and rosemary. Behind all of that, I have a bunch of other plants. I have layers and layers of plants. So coming back here, in the back, I have some hollyhock. I also have some dragon fruit, which is completely scorched by the sun, but it's still alive, so that's all that matters. I also have a pineapple guava, which flowered again this year, but it did not keep any of its fruit, which I was looking forward to trying, so hopefully next year. The variety is called the Coolidge variety, and it's supposed to be self-pollinating, but for some reason it has not set fruit for me. One thing I will say is, despite it being in full sun, this plant has zero scorch on it. The leaves look a little bit greener than they usually do. It's loving that spot. The tree next to it actually has more scorched leaves, and this is an Owari Satsuma mandarin. That was a new planting this year, and I'm just trying to give it a break until the fall. And then we have this Parfianca pomegranate loaded with fruit. The only thing is that a lot of it split, which is so frustrating. And others got completely scorched by the sun. So this is like rock hard. Down here I have more Armenian cucumbers, and all of these were dwarf tomato plants, which are now scorched, but still trying to stay alive. You can see the dragon fruit a lot better from this angle. And look how sad that looks. The Ecuador Palora looks a lot better though. Look at that. Here is my peace rose, looking a little bit fried, at least on the blooms, but most of the rose bush is still intact with little to no burn. And then next to it is my Mexico La Grande avocado with a little bit of leaf scorch, but nothing too bad. It's still alive, and that's what's keeping me happy right now. Over here I have more dead tomatoes. This is my Lady of Shalott Rose from David Austin, and it has definitely grown several feet during the summer, but I expect it to really push out growth during the fall, at which point I'm going to set up a trellis. I just haven't because it's so hot here in the low desert. This is the other Lady of Shalott Rose. In the front I have some peppers, and then this is either a loofah gourd or some other sort of gourd. I don't remember what I planted here exactly, but it recently started growing and filling in this trellis, which makes me very happy. And I'm just gonna let it do its thing because I'm curious to find out what kind of plant this is. Look at how beautiful the leaves look. Most of these containers are empty, so I'm going to top them off with some compost and then direct sow or transplant things into them. I really want to add more vining plants to these trellises. Hidden amongst all the foliage, I have a thornless variety of blackberry. This is the Triple Crown thornless. I planted a couple of thornless varieties this year because I want to replace my Rosboro blackberries with them. The Rosboro performs really well here in the low desert, but the thorns I just cannot get behind, and I have small kids, and picking them is honestly a huge pain. So I want to phase them out. This papaya I started from seed and it's hanging in there, but not looking the best because there's a couple other plants in there, so I really need to thin them out. There's some watermelons starting to climb out, which makes me happy. Hopefully we get something. Over on this side I have a zucchino rampicante squash trailing out, which has started coming back to life too because it was dying back significantly. I thought it was time to pull it out actually. And then as soon as it started cooling down, it just popped up with new growth. So I'm going to let it be. And the craziest thing about it is the fact that it's in a little 5-gallon container. And look how beautiful this is. Not only has it started growing this way, but the vine trailed over here and started climbing up this trellis. And now it's dangling down because I haven't been out here to keep it contained. Behind it, I have a Burbank plum. I planted this one after I lost my Santa Rosa last year because I wanted an extra plum tree just in case anything happens to my Santa Rosa. And also, I really love growing different varieties to taste and see the difference. And so there it is. This is my Mexican cream guava. One thing I will say about this tree is the fact that one day I came out here when it was really windy a few months back and it was completely toppled over. So I have it tied to the trellis, hoping to stabilize it a little bit more, but that's one thing that was kind of a downfall. And it's got fruit on it. Oh, is this ready? It just fell off. You guys, but it feels hard though. I don't know if this is ready. Anyways, wait, I see another one down there. Ooh, is it dropping the fruit or are these ready? And I see another one down here. Okay, I'll have to bring, oh wait, and another one, and another one. What? Okay, well all this fruit dropped off, so I guess I'll have to try it. Oh my goodness. On this trellis, I have a bunch of tomatillos, which I thought had died back because this is what was left after they got potato beetles. To get rid of the potato beetles, I sprinkled diatomaceous earth, which you can still see right here. I need to clean that off. And that helped to protect the plants enough for them to bounce back. So hopefully we get another flush come fall. But unfortunately, even though some things are coming back to life, I don't think this one's coming back. This was my Frederick passion fruit and it's crispy. It's completely gone. This was a replacement for another one that I transplanted last year that did not make it. And this one was looking so beautiful. It produced 2 fruit, but then The crazy heat took it out. So I'm gonna plant another one this fall, but I'm gonna put it in a different location. And I'll reserve this spot for something that can tolerate more heat. I might have to do the same thing for these banana plants because look how dry they are. Again, because of the crazy temperatures that we've been having, but also because I'm hoping that if there's anything still alive in there, that all of the foliage can keep it a little bit protected from the sun until the weather cools down. And then I'll go through and prune everything and hopefully they pop back up. Next to the passion fruit, I have a ton of citrus, which has honestly taken off and looks gorgeous up against the wall. This one is a Valencia orange, and I think there's like 2 or 3 fruit on this tree. This is the first time it produces. This is which one is this one? This is a blood orange, and it's really tall but has no fruit on it. This is another papaya that I started from seed. This is a cara orange, and there's a couple of fruit on it as well. I see one right there. On this trellis, I have, I think, some beans growing up here. Those might be snake beans, I hope. If not, it might be some other sort of gourd, but I'm hoping for snake beans. I also had Armenian cucumbers growing here, but even those got fried by the sun, and usually those can tolerate quite a bit of sun, along with some zucchino rampicante, and I totally forgot to harvest that one, so I guess I'll just use it for seeds. There's one okra plant looking beautiful right here, but it hasn't been too productive, and I think that's just because of the heat. It is staying alive, it's just not producing. This is my improved Meyer lemon tree, and it has a decent amount of fruit on it. Look at that, gorgeous. And then next to it, I had a little bay leaf tree, which completely fried in the sun, so I'm gonna replace it. This is a ruby red grapefruit, a variegated pink lemon tree, which got a little bit of scorching, but very minimal, and this year I might let it try and produce. We'll see though. In front of it, I have a pigeon peat little tree that I'm trying to grow. I started this one from seed that I bought on Amazon, and it's taken a while to take off, but it's hanging in there. And then the rest of these containers are full of dying plants. Behind them, I have an apple tree with a little bit of chlorosis going on. I think I was overwatering to compensate for all the other apple trees that I've killed in the last few years from underwatering. So I've cut back on some of the water, and hopefully it pops right up. But the watermelon really seems to like all the water I've been giving it. Look at that. It's coming back to life. Next to it is a Rossboro blackberry. I'm definitely going to cut this back come fall. Right now it's just a huge thorny mess, so I'm not even messing with it. And in this container I have asparagus. It's looking beautiful and producing a couple of asparagus spears, but they're really tiny. But hopefully over the next few years we get a good amount of production from it, and I'm definitely going to plant more this fall as well. I had onions here that unfortunately got scorched by the sun. This is another apple tree. I think this is, I forget what variety. Oh my gosh, it might be Golden Dorset apple tree, Dorset Golden. This is another Dorset Golden apple tree that I planted for my daughter, and thankfully it's still alive with minimal scorching. This container is full of Roselle hibiscus or Jamaica, and these plants are looking gorgeous and so full. Last year I didn't really get a production because the birds kept eating all the seeds that I direct sowed, and these I planted from transplants that I started indoors. This peach tree looks very sad right now. This is what is it called? This is a desert gold peach, and it's seen better days. It did give us some fruit this year, and the good thing is that it's hanging in there, so as soon as it cools down I expect it to flush with a little bit more growth, and then come next spring we should get several more peaches from it. I don't know if this tree is still alive. I think it is. Oh no, that's brown. Oh no, it might not have made it. This is a Burbank plum that looked beautiful up until a few weeks ago when the heat really came into the low desert, and it looks like it might be dead. Which makes me so sad because this was a gift for my sister too, and I tried my best to take care of it, but oh man, the sun here in the low desert is just so unforgiving. But everywhere I'm scratching, it's brown. Yeah, look at that, brown. No. Okay, well, I'll have to replace it with something else. I don't know if I'll plant another tree or if I'll just use the container as a sort of raised garden bed. That makes me so sad. Next to it, another Rosboro blackberry. This is an Anna apple hanging in there. One thing that I think helped to keep it alive, you can still see some of the leftover zinnias, is I planted zinnias all around it. So up until a few weeks ago, whenever it was really hot, it was kind of shaded out by all of the zinnias, which I think helped to keep it alive until it started cooling down a little bit more. Next to it, I have tomato cages with dead tomatoes inside. They are from Gardener Supply Company. They sent them out to me last year and I love them. I wanted to wait to see how they held up during the summer months because our Arizona sun is just crazy and these feel sturdy, but some of the pieces are plastic. So I wanted to see how well they worked and they work really good. Really, really good. Next to it, I have a Pakistan mulberry and look how huge this tree got. Come fall, I'm definitely gonna prune it back quite a bit because I don't want it to get too big. It is in a 25-gallon container and it seems to just love this location. I haven't gotten any production from it yet, but hopefully next year. More dead tomatoes. This next tree is a Florida Prince peach. And again, the foliage does not look the best. It's severely burnt, but it's hanging in there. And that's the most important part because I want a lot more peaches next year. The fruit on this tree was absolutely delicious. Some of the sweetest peaches I've ever tried and my kids love them. So I can't wait to harvest more soon. This was the replacement Santa Rosa plum and look how gorgeous it looks. See, I knew that this tree could handle full sun. It's just that I wasn't watering it enough to allow it to handle the full sun because it was just focused on staying alive since I wasn't giving it enough water to drink. And next to it, I have another Rosboro blackberry. And for some reason, this one's super alive compared to all the other ones. Maybe because it was shielded from the full sun by the amaranth that you see dried up in front of it. And then in front of the trees, I have a bunch of containers. So because I use a lot of black containers, I know that those can heat up a lot more in the sun. So in front of them, I added some whiskey barrels. These are more of a wood tone, and I added a lot of vining plants to them and plants that could just tolerate heat, like this Rosa hibiscus, some more watermelon, some more sweet potatoes, and mint, which I kind of regret planting there because it's starting to flower, and I might actually try and rip that out and then just plant mint somewhere else, like this bird bath right here, because the mints just spread way too quickly and I didn't realize it would take over the whole thing, and I can't use up that much mint even if I wanted to. I have a bunch more barrels right here that I'm gonna set up. I just need to get them filled, which will be done next week. And a lot of these are actually ready to go. I had corn growing here and it looked beautiful, but I didn't really get much of a production. So I'm gonna try to grow it in the garden beds and I'm gonna use these for things like onions or garlic. We've made it back to this side of the little mini orchard that I have in my backyard. And hopefully you're not too bored by now, but this little area is mainly reserved for a lot of tropicals. So first up, I have a little Cotto avocado hanging in there, but some parts have definitely seen better days. Look at that. That is the Arizona sun for you. And that is despite having some shade cloth right here, having a microclimate. It's just, it's tough gardening out here during the summer months, but hopefully it'll bounce back and I still see a lot of green foliage, so that's a good sign. Next to it is a dwarf Cavendish banana. This banana took forever to recover from being damaged by the winter and the summer sun. It still hasn't produced fruit, but it has started producing some little pups. Oh, that makes me so happy. I really want to take some and transplant them into one of the garden beds that gets a little bit more morning sun, afternoon shade, and have that as my tropical garden bed. Next to it is an African Pride Atemoya. It's protected by other plants like this James Galway rose, which looks stunning. It's a climbing rose that's starting to make its way up this trellis. Come fall, it should explode with a few more feet of growth. I also have a Fuerte avocado. This one looks beautiful. There is a little bit of leaf scorching, but not too much. And this one I think is in one of the most protected spots here in the corner of the yard. Behind it is a gold nugget loquat, which looks really sad, but it's pushing out new growth. And I know that as soon as it cools down, it's going to be a lot happier than it is right now. I also have things like pepper plants right here. These are my iceberg roses. Look how fright they are currently. And the same can be said about the star jasmine. That was breathtaking a few months ago. Now it's just hanging in there, but that's normal here in the low desert at this time. Now that I've shown you all of that, let's make our way into the main garden. In the corner, I have a heritage raspberry, which has seen better days, but it's still alive. So come fall, hopefully it comes back. If not, I'll probably just replace it with something else. Next to the loquat, I have a fruit punch mango, which produced one single fruit this year because it was its first time producing, and I picked it a few days ago. But the fruit punch mango is looking marvelous. Oh my goodness, it's still trying to push out growth. Even though some of the new leaves keep getting scorched by the sun, it just keeps trying. So I know that as soon as it cools down, it's really gonna explode with growth, and hopefully next year we get more than one mango. Next to it is my bear's lime tree. This is a tree that took forever to recover because I had initially planted it way too deep. Back when I first started gardening, it's one of the oldest trees in the entire garden. And last year, I think I got either 1 or 2 lemons from it. And this year, this is just one branch. There's already 3 of them on there, and there's several more hidden throughout. So next year, I expect even more. This is my clementine. I thought there was at least 1 or 2 fruit on it, but apparently not. So hopefully next year, but this year is the year of recovery because this is also another tree that I planted far too deep. It's one of the originals to the garden, and it's taken a while to bounce back because I've had to do a lot of trial and error with watering, with feeding, and with the soil that I had it in. Next to it is an empty container because that used to house my yellow hawk plum, which was doing amazing up until the hailstorm that we had back in February, which took it out. And then next to that, I have a tropic pink guava. Some of the fruit seems a little dry though. And a red Malaysian guava peeking out over there. The garden beds are full but empty because a lot of the tomatoes in them have already done what they were gonna do, and they're basically just taking up space now. So all of these will be removed so that I can plant new ones. Some of the pepper plants are still hanging in there though. This one is taller than I am. But the rest of the bed is basically empty. I have a few banana pups that I tried to transplant in here, and they're not looking so great, so I'll try and plant a couple more. But this is the bed that I want to use as my tropical bed because it has the perfect little microclimate to be able to grow some of the tropical plants that I can't grow in my little orchard. This is what the trellises look like right now. Even the melons got scorched by the sun and died back. This bed is also very empty. I have some coral vine starting to take off, and it took a while for it to pop out, but I know that once it really starts growing, it starts getting established rather quickly. So I'm going to continue to wind it up my shade structure so that eventually I can have it dangling up there. Yep, I definitely needed to cut back on the watering. The rest of the garden bed is basically empty. There's 1 roselle hibiscus, a tiny little eggplant, and basically a lot of empty space right here. These used to be some indeterminate tomatoes. Guess how many I harvested from this entire trellis full of vines? I got maybe like 2 or 3, if that. I got a lot more cherry tomatoes, but the slicers did not do anything for me other than produce leaves. And once they actually started flowering, it got far too hot for them and they completely fizzled out. So that was really fun. And then look at this trellis. It used to be full of squash and cucamelons. You can still see all the little vines right there. But unfortunately, the sun scorched every single one of them. And I was so confident in them being able to take the heat that I didn't start any for the fall because I figured I had so many growing in the garden that I didn't need to start anymore, and I should have because now I don't have anything. So hopefully the tubers will produce something, but if not, I learned my lesson, and next year I'm just going to continue sowing some backups just in case. One thing that is taking the heat really well is the eggplant. It's not producing right now, but it is staying alive, and that's the most important part because once it cools down, it'll go into full production and it'll be way more mature. And then as the years go on, I'll continue to overwinter these eggplant so they'll be able to handle the sun even better and hopefully produce even more. On this side, it looks like some vines are starting to come back. Those might be Armenian cucumbers, which I'm hoping for because last year I had so many dangling down everywhere around this time of the year. but right now it's bare because it's just been far too hot that nothing really wants to produce or be alive around here. This is the view from my bedroom window, and it still looks really beautiful and magical, but I can't wait to move that tree from right there because it is bugging me. This is a citrus tree that my mother-in-law had for many years. It was planted in her yard. She had her yard redone, so she needed to rehome it. And what makes me feel really happy about that is over the last decade, she has had to remove several trees from her yard, and she said that every single time none of them made it. And look at this one. These dried leaves are from the grapevines, not from the tree. But look how beautiful it looks. It's in this area right now where it's a lot more protected from the sun just because it was transplanted. Most of its roots were chopped off. Most of the foliage was chopped off. So it needed a few months to recover. But as soon as it starts cooling down, I'm moving it out into my little orchard because I need this space freed up, and this tree has a lot of thorns. So I'm scared to walk by it, and I have gotten hurt by it when I first planted it. But look how beautiful it looks. The grapevines on the trellis have gone crazy. For a while, there was a lot of dead leaves in here, and I think they just needed a little bit more water, but also because they got less sun, the vines just didn't need the foliage. But the rest of them seem to be extremely green and wilder than they've ever been. I could not keep up with the pruning of these because it's just been a really busy summer. And they have gone all over my shade structure, climbed up all of my lights, and honestly, it's a wild mess, so I can't wait to tidy these up. But in the meantime, we have a nice shady tunnel to hang out under in the evenings, which we truthfully don't do because it's still really hot, but it's nice to have it either way. The good thing about the grapevines is that they've been offering a lot of protection to my Don Juan roses. These I planted in memory of my mom, and they look beautiful. There's absolutely no scorching over here because they're so well protected. And they've been so happy here that they've continued to bloom throughout the summer, which is crazy because I usually see them bloom in the fall and the spring. And here's the other one. Next to it, there's a lot of dried foliage of beans and other vines, but the roses themselves are looking marvelous. Ow. Oh, okay. This is my flame seedless grapevine, and as you can see, it's going just as wild as the Thompson seedless. On this panel, I have two vines, one on either side, and they were super productive. And I learned a lot about how to prune them and how to thin out fruit so that I know what to do next year, because I had far too much fruit on it, which sounds like it wouldn't be a problem, but in my case it was, and I'll explain why in another video. But those are the garden beds. And then down the pathways, I have pepper plants, which are just hanging in there. Oh my gosh. These have shade cloth, and even with the shade cloth, they still got scorched by the sun. Look at this. And I mean, right next to it is my red Malaysian guava in a really sad state as well. Look at all this fruit. Just completely fried by the sun. And the thing is that I didn't start any more pepper plants. I wasn't focused on that anymore because I had so many. And now I wish that I had started more because some of these might need replacing. So next spring, I'll go ahead and do that. And in the meantime, I'm just going to hope that most of these come back. The pathways are extremely messy, and that's because the birds make a mess of everything. Imagine dozens of birds clawing at every single piece of mulch in the garden beds and the containers, clawing at every single vine and plant. It was a nightmare. And the only thing that seems to have helped as of right now is my cat Mika coming out here and patrolling the garden a couple times a day. And this is one of the only trellises that looks nice and lush but a bit wild. This has a bunch of Armenian cucumbers growing up. There was also some pumpkins, but unfortunately those vines did not make it, so I need to clean all of this out, tidy it up so that we can walk through again, because usually it's a dream for spiders and their webs. And the vines have just started going everywhere, so it truly does look like an abandoned garden. This trellis also has Armenian cucumbers, and that's the only thing alive on here, so soon I will be replacing that with pumpkins and different vining crops. But the rest of the bed is basically empty. All of this is just prime real estate for planting in. I just need to amend them. And truthfully, I could just plant in it right now, but I really want to top them off with some good compost from the AZ Warm Farm so that I could have a nice fresh start for the fall season. Even though the other pepper plants are barely hanging in there, these are growing out of control. These are 2 pepper plants that I transplanted last year from containers that I used to have up against the walls. And they're wild. They've completely toppled over, but they're still alive, which is the most important part. So as soon as I get a chance, I'm going to cut them back, stake them up, and hopefully we'll get a nice flush of peppers from them. But the rest of the garden bed is empty. Completely empty. It's just those 2 pepper plants hanging in there. This was a wall of tomatoes that did not produce a single thing. I was very disappointed in these because I had high expectations from them, but I might plant other crops in this trellis like cucumbers. I think that would be really, really nice. And then this whole pathway is full of eggplant, most of which have spider mites. Look at this. Oh my gosh. The spider mites just show up whenever it gets really hot here, and living in the low desert, that's gonna happen. Thankfully the new foliage seems fine, but I definitely need to come through and spray these. I just haven't done so because it's so hot that if I spray anything, that's basically just gonna burn the plants up even more. But yep, a bunch of eggplant over here. The next part of the garden is Fig Tree Alley, which at one point had nothing but fig trees and now has a few others mixed in as well. The first is this tropic white guava that has taken the sun like a champ. Some of the fruit is a little bit scorched. So we'll see what happens with that. Hopefully it flushes out another crop, but if not, maybe next year. It's just the sun here is so intense. I don't blame the poor tree. Next to it is my lemon guava tree. This is Lenny the guava. You could tell by his crooked trunk. This year I might actually prune this back and then just let it keep growing straight. But last year I had it on the other side of the yard and it was just completely scorched to pieces. And this year the top portion is scorched as well, but the bottom portion is still intact. And down here there's some fruit hidden, so this should ripen nicely. And even though we lost a bunch of fruit, we're still gonna get to try some, and that's the important part. Next to it is my Florida Prince peach. This is my first and only successful graft that I've ever done. So the bottom portion was a dwarf contender peach tree, which wouldn't have produced anything in my area because we don't have enough chill hours. So I grafted a portion of my other Florida Prince peach onto here, and look at that graft. And look at that tree. Next year we should get peaches from it. And then the rest is nothing but fig trees that are still loaded with fruit. One thing I had noticed though is a lot of the fruit was becoming very like desiccated. It was growing nicely, but then it dried out and just fell off. And I think that's just because of my watering practices. You can see one right here. It's just spongy and not very good. So that's a little disappointing, but the good thing is that the trees are still alive and they're fruiting. It's just my watering practices that I needed to fix. They're still putting on more fruit, so hopefully now that I've changed up the watering schedule, we'll get the fruit to stay on there and ripen nicely. But look at this. Every single tree has fruit, and then the fruit that does stay on, like this one, like this would have been a nice one the birds get to. So I need to come through and bag all of the figs because look at all of that. It's so annoying. And it's like that with every piece of fruit. I have the bags too. It's just I've been so busy that I haven't had the time to come out here and bag anything. Oh, here's a good one. Oh, this one's not ready though. Here's another fig tree loaded with fruit. And another one. Look how beautiful. Most of the trees are looking fantastic. There's only 2 fig trees that seem to be struggling. This is the first one. You can see some of the dried leaves here, but it put on quite a bit of growth down at the bottom, and it's looking a lot better right now. And the other one is this one. This is the last fig tree that I have, and it's not dead. It's still alive and actually trying to push out more growth from the trunk. So I'm gonna leave that until summer is over, so that way I can tell and make sure that the rest of this is still alive. But this is what the rest of the trees look like. They're beautiful, completely Completely loaded with fruit and lush. I just need to protect the fruit from the birds. I hope I haven't forgotten anything. It is crazy hot out here, so I'm gonna go back inside. But I just wanted to show you guys what the whole garden looked like before I clean it up, because in a week or so, you're not gonna even be able to recognize it. So thank you so much for joining me.